When the canopy closes, the engine comes to life. I get this huge burst of energy, and then I know what I have to do. When I take a hold of the controls, I know that I'm not going to let go of those controls until I stop. My thoughts quickly focus on the task at hand, and that's, we're going to make history. Every time I go down that racetrack, I'm making history.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Horsepower Heritage. I'm Maurice Merrick, and greetings to all of you listening from places like Fort Mill, South Carolina, Kingfisher, Oklahoma, Centennial, Colorado, Perth, Australia, Singapore, and Barcelona, Spain. Thanks for joining me once again, and it's that time of year when most of us are out and about and enjoying our classic cars and motorcycles. And I hope you've been enjoying some great drives and car events lately. After a very wet winter and spring here in California, I've been taking full advantage of better weather recently on 2 wheels and 4. And I've been spending some quality time in the garage on a couple of projects. And that sense of accomplishment when you're making progress is so satisfying. And I would love to hear about your projects, what you've got going on with your own machines. So drop me a line, go to horsepowerheritage.com and click on the contact button there, and I'll share your thoughts on a future episode, kind of a listener mailbag segment. It's something I'd like to do on a fairly regular basis, so drop me a line. That's horsepowerheritage.com, click on the contact button, and send it off. Also, if you'd like a Horsepower Heritage decal for your toolbox or your car or whatever, I'm happy to send that out. Just make sure you include your mailing address. All right, let me tell you about today's episode. Valerie Thompson is my guest, and she's an accomplished motorcyclist and land speed record holder. And I have to say, she's such a down-to-earth person, very humble about all she's done in motorsport. And land speed racing is such a highly specialized corner of the motorsport world. The machines are often experimental, and they're built by privateers with little or no support from major manufacturers. It's frequently a labor of love. So today you're going to get a glimpse of what it's like to hurtle across the salt flats in a streamlined motorcycle. Before we get started, I want to ask you to help me grow the audience. Share Horsepower Heritage with your friends. Send somebody a link to the podcast so they can listen. And you can also become a patron of the show at buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage and contribute as little as $2 or a higher amount of your choice. It's a great way to support the show. You can even do a monthly recurring contribution if you like. And finally, if you enjoy the podcast, please leave me 5 stars and a quick review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And that helps new listeners discover the show. Thank you, by the way, if you've recently left a review. I really appreciate it. Okay, we're going to fire it up and talk land speed, 300 miles per hour and beyond with Valerie Thompson. And that's coming up right after this. Hi guys, Maurice Merrick here, and I want to let you know about 3 great scale models available right now at modelcitizendiecast.com. First, there's the pocket-size Lancia Stratos HF Stradale in 1/64th scale by Mini GT. Or how about a BMW 3.0 CS Coupe in 1/43rd scale by Mini Champs in your choice of 3 different colors. Or if American muscle is more your style, how about the 1968 Shelby GT500 convertible in great big 1/18th scale by Acme Trading Company. It's finished in Acapulco blue with white racing stripes, and boy oh boy, check out those mag wheels. You can find all of these and more at modelcitizendiecast.com. Use the promo code HERITAGE at checkout and get 10% off your order. Limitations apply. From race cars to street cars and everything in between, it's Model Citizen Diecast, because your inner child still wants to play with cars. Valerie Thompson, fastest woman on 2 wheels. What a pleasure it is to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited, Valerie. When I learned about the opportunity to interview you, I thought, man, what an accomplished lady, and almost by accident, because you were in the corporate world. You had really no ambitions to be a racer. You weren't interested in motorcycles per se. It was kind of accidental, wasn't it?
It was accidental. It was accidental when I got laid off from my 13 year of my banking job. So, that happened.
But you kind of pivoted to this completely unexpected world.
Absolutely. I started right from high school. I went right into the banking world, and I finally made it to, a top of the ladder in the banking world. And so, being laid off, they're like, well, you can move with us to Ohio. And I'm born and raised in Washington State. I'm like, I'm not going to Ohio. So I did take a seat back, and I did collect my unemployment, and I got my severance pay. And I was really left, my heart was broken because now I'm leaving this bank, and yeah, I could go get another banking job. But I thought to myself, is like, man, I need to reinvent myself. I need to do something that I really, really have a passion for. And when I discovered my passion for riding for motorcycles at the age of 32 years old, I quickly bought my first motorcycle.
And that first bike was a Harley Fat Boy?
My first bike was a Harley Davidson custom 1200 Sportster.
Okay.
And that only lasted for 3 months because that's when I got my Harley Davidson Fat Boy.
Well, you upgraded rather quickly. I mean, either of those bikes as starters can be daunting. Most people start out with like maybe a 500, something a little bit more tame. You had the tiger by the tail from the start.
I sure did. I had the horsepower from the start.
Yeah. What was it about Harleys? Was that just like influence from friends who were riding, or?
Well, it was influenced by a guy that asked me to go for a ride on the back of his bike, and I would be sitting on one of those little seats on the back of the fender, and he discovered that he thought my jeans would scratch his fender, and that's when he said, there's a lot of women that are out there riding now, and this, I'll remind you, this is in 1999.
Right.
And, having the jeans scratch his fender, I didn't think my jeans would touch his fender, but he's like, I could take you down to the local dealership here in Bellevue, Washington at Eastside Harley Davidson, look at bikes, see what you think. I did. I looked at many of the bikes, and I found that the Sportster was the only motorcycle I could really felt like I could pick it up, and put it on its kickstand. And it was the lightest bike that they had. So I bought it. I didn't even know how to ride it. I bought it. It stayed at the dealership. I spent probably $3,000 on a bunch of chrome parts and accessories. So while I was getting my license, they were fixing my bike to my liking. And a couple of weeks later, I went back, got my bike, and that the rest is history.
Nice. I wonder if that guy was getting a kickback from the dealership. I wonder how many women he ran this con on. I'm just kidding.
I wish I could find my friend and let him know what kind of a monster he created, but
yeah,
I haven't been successful. I really did try to find him. And so it's, maybe one of these days, maybe he knows what I do. I don't know.
That's pretty.
I haven't heard from him in probably, 20 plus years.
That's pretty incredible, though. He did sort of launch your career in a weird way. Now, normally I would not ask a lady her height and weight, but I think it's important to your story. First of all, we should let people know you're a very athletic woman, and you always have been.
Absolutely.
But your height really has a big influence on the kind of motorcycle you can ride. And also, weight is not as critical, but it is an important factor.
Yeah. So at the time I was 110 pounds, 5'4", and the height was a crucial moment for me because all the other bikes that I tried to pick up and touch, my feet touch on the ground, I was on my tippy toes and I did not feel secure at all. I wish that the salesperson would have said, hey, if if I take 2 inches and I lower the bike, it lowers the center of gravity and you can be able to pick it up quite easy. That didn't happen. So that's why I chose the Sportster. I did get a low profile seat, so that changed the whole dynamic. So that was a plus. But when I got my Fat Boy, I did have it lowered 2 inches and I felt so secure. I could wear heels if I wanted to.
And were you able to pick assuming the Fat Boy ever fell on its side, were you able to pick it up?
I was. It never fell.
Yeah, I mean, that's all technique, right? So
it's all technique. It's all what you learned in your riding school.
Yeah, riding school is so important. And I imagine that you took advantage of that early on.
Yep. I right away when I had, picked out the bike, picked out all the parts, immediately I signed up for the rider school and took the test to get the license. And, it's kind of funny is because after I set all these records, after I went really, really fast, 300 miles per hour, I worked with the local here in Arizona. I worked with the school that they, give your license to. And I actually did an undercover writing experience. So I took the class all over again. I just didn't have to do the test. And at the end, they announced who I was, what I was doing there. And I was just trying to give back to those people and encourage them along the way. So it was a nice little thing to do.
But at that point, you were already a land speed record holder. Bit by bit, you were breaking your own records. 2006, 145.647 miles per hour. 2007, 161.736 miles per hour. And then later, you went 208 miles per hour on a production BMW S1000RR. That was, I think, at the Texas Mile, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a standing start. 208 miles an hour. You saw 100 miles an hour in first gear, which that bike has incredible performance. But it's a production motorcycle.
Correct. So I did bump it up from 208 to 217.7 miles per hour.
Right. And that was in cooperation with BMW Motorrad, right? They saw what you were doing and they wanted to support you.
Absolutely. Yep. We had a nice little relationship for 7 years. And, the BMW S1000RR is truly my favorite bike, except for a Harley Davidson. But they're two different bikes.
Let's talk about a few of the bikes that you've done land speed on. We've got production motorcycles. Then you've got your drag bikes, which are long wheelbase. They're purpose-built. They're not a factory motorcycle. And then the streamliners, which are just something completely different. But I should point out to people that we're not talking about rocket bikes. We're not talking about jet-powered bikes. These are all internal combustion piston-powered motorcycles. Tell us how important it is that you're doing this on bikes that have, combustion engines.
Well, when you're in a streamliner motorcycle or in a streamliner vehicle car, you kind of throw out everything you know about being on a sit-on bike and going really fast. There's the biggest difference is that when you're on a sit-on bike, you feel the air. You can lean with the bike when the wind is blowing you off. You can lean into the air. Well, when you're inside a cockpit, you don't feel the wind whatsoever. And so that's when you use your, the vision. It comes in your peripheral. It's really important. You use a horizon to steer. And when I'm racing in the streamliner motorcycle, it's not a normal steering wheel. You have the F16,
the joysticks,
the controls. So, you have them on each side and trying to balance when you can't lean over you don't know if the wind's taking you right or left until it's too late, so you really have to, be focused on going straight. And so when the streamliner leans, you got to steer with two joysticks.
Right. And the gyroscopic effect keeps the bike upright from a certain speed.
Yes. The faster you go, the gyro, it really gets up on its wheels. So that's when you have fun.
By the way, the motorcycle we're talking about is called the Bub 7. It's a fully encapsulated, streamlined motorcycle. It was designed by Dennis Manning, who has been building land speed bikes, I think, since the 70s. And so it's a V4, 3 liters, turbocharged. It's like 500 horsepower, right? There's not anything on this bike that is like an off-the-shelf part.
All custom made.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's really incredible. And Dennis designed the bike to sort of resemble the outline of a salmon.
Yeah, a coho salmon.
That's so funny. But it makes sense. Salmon swim upstream against strong current. Like, it's kind of inspired, if you ask me.
Yes. I think the story was that he was out with his friends and they were fishing, and he said, hey, how fast does a salmon go? And he was like, well, probably 400 miles per hour, through the air. And then in water, it's completely different, and that's why, and this is just in a short nutshell, but I could be wrong. However, he's like, a light bulb went off. And that's when he said, I'm going to build the Streamliner, besides for safety and speed, I'm going to build it like a coho salmon.
Yeah, the super salmon. So cool. By the way, how did you get the opportunity to ride that bike?
Well, after I was riding and racing on my BMW S1000R, I always felt the need to go fast. I told myself in the year 2006 that I wanted to be the world's fastest female in the world. And I probably should have said I want to be the world's fastest person in the world, because I would have been, I've already accomplished the world's fastest on 2 wheels as a female, but my main goal was to go, the fastest period. So, at the time I had circled back to the NHRA, bought another pro stock motorcycle, and I was, doing some test runs, and I had been away from drag racing for a couple of years, and I just couldn't get it. I was having some trouble. And I said, I'd rather be driving this Streamliner and being the world's fastest person, period, and female. I'd rather be in the history books than go to an NHRA drag race and be out first round or not even qualify. So I made the right choice. I reached out to Dennis, and we had a great conversation and took a trip to California, met with him and the team. And, immediately I already knew I wanted to say yes. So
you guys clicked.
We did. Yes.
Plus your bona fides were well known by that time. He knew
Yes.
that you were capable of doing this.
It wasn't proven until I got in it and I did it. And that's when, I had to do 3 license runs. And then my first real on run, 285. And then I went 304. And after that, he was convinced that I was the right person for that seat.
Valerie, I have so many questions. I want to back up because you said you were having trouble on the drag strip. What do you mean? Were you just not hitting the Christmas tree? Were you not was the bike not doing what you wanted it to do? Was it a personal performance issue, that maybe some kind of block that you needed to get past?
It was a mental block. It was one of those things that you have to do everything within time, one thing at a time. And what was happening was, when I was launching the motorcycle, we're talking about 3.5 G-force or even more nowadays, but 3.5 G-force to being one with the motorcycle, to release the clutch, full throttle, release the clutch, and your body to, get down in the position. For whatever reason, the mental blockage wasn't, I wasn't mingling with it. I wasn't one with the motorcycle, and I just had a hard time because I had been away from the drag racing world for 5 years, and I just didn't pick it right back up.
Well, I mean, it happens to, I think, all professional racing drivers at some point. There's this obstacle to overcome. There's a lot that happens in a drag race in a very short period of time.
There's just in drag racing, it's so quick. I mean, it's a blink of an eye. I mean, you're talking 6.8 8 seconds in a quarter mile now that they're doing, and even 6.7 seconds. So at 201 miles per hour, it's quite exciting. Once you release that clutch and you're full throttle, you dump the clutch, and you got to shift right quickly into second gear.
That we're talking about the mid 2000s?
We're talking about 2016.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I just want to, that's right. Because your 304 mile an hour record was in 16.
Yes, it was. It was a same year. Cause that's when I was deciding, should I, continue with this path I'm going?
Right.
Or should I continue to make history?
The Streamliner is not what we think of when we think of a motorcycle. You're not sitting on it. You're down inside it. Your legs are in front of you, not trailing behind you. It's very compact and narrow. It's like a missile with wheels.
It is. There is absolutely no room to wiggle. You cannot turn your helmet, to look to the side. It's just meant for you keeping yourself focused and going straight, and your helmet pointing straight.
And the engine is behind you. The gearbox is behind you. Really, the only thing that's out in front of you is the controls and the front wheel and forks. The forks are very short. They're like 8 inches.
They're small. They're small. Yeah. And you have your, the big windshield. So that's all I have.
Right. It's like a fighter jet cockpit. You said F-16 earlier, mentioning the joystick controls. Take the listener with you, Valerie, on a run in the Streamliner. The moment of truth arrives. All the conditions are right. What happens next?
So, when the canopy closes, the engine comes to life. I get this huge burst of energy. And then once that's over, I go into this calming zone. I'm totally focused. I know what I have to do. When I take a hold of the controls, I know that I'm not going to let go of those controls until I stop. And I'm strapped into the custom fit motorcycle cockpit with no room to wiggle. When I'm being strapped in, it literally is a bit exhausting. They're tugging, they're pulling on you. But once they're done doing that, and like I said, the canopy closes, my thoughts quickly focus on the task at hand. And that's, we're going to make history. Every time I go down that racetrack, I'm making history. When I'm in a run, it's loud, it's bumpy. I'm pure in concentration mode with a pinch of insanity. My adrenaline kicks in. I'm going very fast, and I have to just concentrate on just absolutely my surroundings. I have to pay attention where I'm at on the racetrack, because if you look down for a split second, you can lose your focus of where you're at on the racetrack. Everything happens in slow motion when you're going that fast. And I'm thinking to myself, there is no room for errors. I have to be perfect. And like I said, sometimes when you think that you've had the slowest run, it ends up being the fastest run.
And you have instrumentation in front of you. You know how fast you're going, but the indicated speed on your instruments isn't necessarily the trap speed, right?
Well, I mean, there is the speed, but I'll tell you is the speed is the easy part, but everything else is, everything else is what I'm concentrated on. I'm not worried about how fast I'm going. I am worried about making my shift buttons on time, making sure that the bike is not in a position where I need to turn it off. And, the stopping part for, with the parachutes, and it does add a little bit of G-force. It's when you're done pulling those parachutes, it's like, it's so exciting. It's like, okay, now my job really starts. That's when your job starts. And to get that bike slowed down, in, a matter of 2.5 miles, it's quite, intense.
How far do you have at Bonneville? It's like, 12 miles?
Well, in a perfect world, 11 miles would be absolutely amazing. However, when I went to 304 miles per hour, when I went 328 miles per hour, I did have a longer racetrack. And, sometimes at Bonneville here in Utah, you don't get You don't have that at all.
Yeah, because the conditions aren't perfect across that entire length of salt.
Right. And I have to be on a very groomed racetrack. I could not go into the rubble towards the end of the track.
Yeah.
It would destroy a lot of things, moving parts. So it's not good.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, even small dips, right? Or a tiny bit of standing water, it's not good. Yeah. Silly question, but how does the bike remain upright until you're at a speed where you can have that gyroscopic balance?
Yeah. So when I get to a certain speed, and that's around 80 miles per hour, I have this little button and it pulls down these, the skids, and they keep me upright. So when you're rolling into, 50, 30 miles per hour, 20 miles per hour, it goes back, it bounces back and forth, but they're skids. And so it kind of helps you balance.
So they're like little outriggers, right? And
they're outriggers. Yeah. Yeah.
They retract into the bike when you're ready to push the button.
Yes.
Very cool. So simple, right? I'll bet it's really not that simple though, to engineer it and, to make it strong enough and yet light enough and to be foolproof so that every time you push the button, they do what they're supposed to do. That's
absolutely. I haven't had one fail yet.
Yeah. Good for you. We should let people know it's the average of 2 runs, right? That's the official speed.
Yes.
And you have to do it one after the other. You can't do one today and one tomorrow.
Right. And you do have a certain time limit. So I believe it's in less than 2 hours. It might be, I might be wrong on that. It might be within an hour. I'm not sure what it is these days, but yeah, it's quick. It's a quick turnaround.
So this is a high risk activity, as professional as you are and the team is. And in March of 2018, you were in Australia for a land speed record attempt, and you had a terrible crash in the Streamliner.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear about that. Fortunately, you weren't seriously injured. I mean, you kind of cheated death, let's be honest, because crashing at that speed, thankfully, you had the presence of mind to pull your parachute.
Yes and no.
Oh, okay. Well, tell us the story, because it's horrific to watch, but it's also fascinating to know how you managed this to the extent that you could.
So when I was on my run, it felt so great. It felt like when I got to this certain part of the racetrack, which I believe it was at mile 2.5, I said to myself, wow, this is like, it's so smooth. It's so nice. And the bike was, running really good. And then all of a sudden, within a blink of an eye, it was, oh no, this is not going to be good. So the bike just kind of went sideways, just in a very graceful tip over. And then I completely just blacked out. I know the 2 things that I have to do when in a crash is hit the parachutes and take my arms and cover my chest. Because if my hands are out there and the cockpit lid opens, my hands could be kind of all over the place, but I am strapped with my arms. I got arm restraints as well. And so they're not allowed to touch the outside. But when I went straight up in the air vertical, the cockpit lid was off. I was knocked out. And then it came upside down and it just took this big, huge dip and it crushed the salt flats and left a big, huge dip in the road. And let me just tell you, the salt is so hard. In our pits, we have to stake the tarp in. And in order to, we thought we will just use a hammer and a nail. Oh no, you can't do that.
Right. Because the salt is so hard, you've actually got to drill through and anchor it.
Yeah, we had to drill through it. It was so hard. So when I left a 6-inch dip in the salt, it was amazing because, it's hard completely. It's like concrete. And I left 2 of those. And then I slid for a mile and I woke up and I was trying to get out and I said, oh no, wait a minute. But I thought to myself, if I could wiggle my hands and and, move my feet around. I think I'm okay. I can get out. Well, I found myself that I couldn't get out. I was kind of stuck in there. And I will tell you that the paramedics, the ambulance, they were there to me within probably 30 seconds.
Right. And that is a feat in and of itself. Of course, they're staged along the course, but an accident could happen at any given point on the course. And you're going so fast,
they can't keep up.
Right. Besides the impact and the force of that, the thing that I immediately think of is the risk of fire. But thankfully, there was no fire.
Right. And that's why I wanted to get out, because I don't know if it's on fire. I wouldn't know, being tipped over, and laying there on its side. I'm kind of at the hands of the mercies of somebody coming to rescue me. I really did try, and fire is my worst, vision that I had. And, cause I just didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what I did because, it did knock me out. And
Valerie, the Streamliner burns, it's an alcohol burning engine.
Correct. Methanol.
So if there were a fire, you wouldn't be able to see it anyway.
Right.
Yeah. It's invisible flame.
Yeah, it was, I didn't know when I was laying there what had happened. So I knew that I just tipped over, but I didn't know how I ended up. I knew that I was sliding.
So you're not really sure if you pulled your chute or not.
No, I did not pull the chute. I just didn't have time, probably from passing out. I didn't have time to pull the chute.
Wow.
The chutes naturally came out because it has a 45 degree, if it tipped over, it would naturally come out. But if I could have probably pulled the chutes a lot more sooner, or they would have came out sooner, maybe I wouldn't have did so many bumps, turns, rolls.
I mean, you had to slow down. That was really the key to surviving this event. It's amazing. Bumps and bruises, pretty much all that you suffered?
Yeah, bumps and bruises. I did cut my leg. I did bite my lip. I think that was probably the worst that I felt, besides my damaged leg, and my broken heart.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, huge broken heart. We all had broken hearts.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine it. You work so hard. You put in so many hours. There's so much. You built this up in your head. You've psyched yourself up for this moment. Everything is going great. And then it was a crosswind, right, that took you out.
Yeah, between a crosswind and, we're not 100% sure exactly what happened. They when they got the bike home from Australia, they're looking at the data, and they took the motorcycle apart bit by bit, just tried to figure out what was the main cause of the crash. And, besides the wind. And with this bike, it's so special with the coefficient drag and the aerodynamics. So if we have more than 3 miles per hour of wind in any direction, we don't go down that racetrack. So we always bring our weather stations with, and so at every other mile or so, we have a weather station. So we have a guy that goes out there and gives us a report. Okay, at mile 5, the wind is, 6 miles per hour. At mile 8, the wind is 3 miles per hour. So, if we have a huge gust of wind, it just will take me out in a heartbeat.
When you're around people who are so good at what they do, so professional, it energizes you.
Oh boy, it sure does. Because, the team makes me look good. I have the easy part. And, without having a team, it doesn't matter how big, how small, your team is. We had a team in Australia of 16 to 18 people, all busting their butts for this. And, getting to know each other for all these years, going through some setbacks, but, having lots of good comebacks, and just working with the team that have been working with this machine for 25 plus years. They know it inside and out. And their number one concern is for me just to be safe. And till this day, I still keep in touch with the team. There's a lot of team members that went in all different directions, which that happens. But the true hardcore people that are responsible for this machine are still all around. And they're the most important part to my success. And having to see the smiles on their face at the end of the racetrack, that is where I feel like I get teary right now, teary eyes, because that is the most rewarding, to have when Dennis Manning would be at the end of the racetrack and he'd give me that hug and he was so proud of me. It meant so much to me.
Yeah, I can imagine. And there must be this sort of weight lifted off of you at the end of a run when you know you've done your job and you've been in the zone.
Yeah.
Like satisfaction, but also sort of like relief, isn't it?
Oh, it's a relief. Yeah, it is. It's like, I did it right. I did it to the best I could. We always say, could we do better? Of course. But, in the moment when I went 328 miles per hour, it wasn't easy. I had so many things that went wrong inside the cockpit, anywhere from the latch, wanting to come up. My racing data screen was going haywire. Everything was, blacking out, and my shift button fell. The motorcycle was only running on 3 cylinders. I was only in 3rd gear when I went 328 miles per hour. So
holy smokes.
I mean, so many things. There's one thing that really, truly upsets you inside the cockpit, and then, that's bad. But then having 5 things at one time within a few seconds is like, how do you handle this? And what do you do? I've never been in that position. There's no training for it. There's no preparation. It's like, all I could do is be calm and be still and do not let go of those, hand grip controls. Don't let go.
There's a term for what you're talking about. It's called task saturation.
Ooh, task. I got to write that down.
And it happens to pilots. It happens to, soldiers in combat, special operators, people in a very high risk, high performance, fast moving environment. Task saturation is a thing. You have to manage it, right? Mentally and physically, which is why physical fitness is so important, because you are an athlete in that cockpit.
Yes.
And I mentioned before, you've been athletic your whole life. Tennis player, pickleballer now. I love pickleball, by the way. It is a great sport.
Oh boy, we could talk hours for that.
We could. I just wanted to get that in there. People need to know your bona fides, and that's one of them.
One thing I've always said is that I feel like my motorcycle is the real athlete, and I just provide the courage.
Yeah. Does 300 miles an hour feel that much different than 200 miles an hour?
Well, once I've done it a few times, it doesn't. But, to reach the 300 mile per hour, it seemed like, yes, it was a huge hurdle. Every 50 miles per hour was a huge hurdle. So, I mean, I guess I could say, yes, it is a big difference. But the faster you go, the easier everything else goes.
The distinction is there. The physics are very different. The G-forces, if something goes wrong, are very different.
Very different. It comes.
The wind resistance is like a logarithmic change. I just wondered if it felt different in the cockpit. What speeds do you shift gears at? What are your shift points?
Oh, that's my favorite part to talk about. So first gear is approximately 190 miles per hour.
Wow.
First, let me set this up. I have 4 gears. First gear is approximately 190 miles per hour. Second is about 250, 60 plus. Third gear, we're in the 300 and 325. And then once you reach that 4th gear, you're more than 350 miles per hour.
And you're turning about 8,500 RPM at max. Is that right?
Yes.
Right. Contrasting, by the way, from your BMW S1000RR, where you're shifting at 14,000 RPM.
Yes.
Bananas.
Yes. I love it. When they tell me, because every gear has a different shift point. And so when they tell me to shift at certain marks, I have a shift light too, but also, I can watch my, data. I will tell you, I am so close. I'm so close to shifting right on time. And that is like one of my favorite things to do is after the run is to give back feedback to the crew, to my crew chief. And I love to go over the data, how I shifted, how, what the bike was doing. And I toot my own horn when I can hit my shift buttons so close.
Yeah. So you guys have plenty of telemetry from each run, so you can review it all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's necessity, right? Because how are you guys going to do better next time if you don't know the data?
The feedback as a driver and a rider are so important to give back to your crew members. And, what I like to do is I like to be in a nice, when I'm done with the run and we all, have our moment there and we're all hugging and high-fiving and I go into, now I have to tell you what the bike did. And I just want to be calm in my head in order to give back the proper feedback. So sometimes when I remember something, I'll go right away and I'll say, I know you're busy, but I have to tell you one more thing.
Yeah. What speed were you attempting when you crashed?
I was attempting to go over 376 miles per hour, which is the world record held by Rocky Robinson. And, we really knew that we were so close to making history that day when I did crash. We knew we were going to go fast. And I did crash at 363 miles per hour. And if I would have went over 380 plus miles per hour.
You would have had the record, the world record.
Would have had the record.
Yeah.
But I would have had to have backed it up too as well. But
right. You would have had to do another run.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, I did have in my thought, because I'm a numbers girl. When I say I'm going to go XYZ fast, I don't like to share how fast I'm going to go, but I had in my head that I was going to go 399 miles per hour and be mad. Because I really wanted to be the first to go 400. And the documentary that we have of the Rockets and Titans that they have been working on, that the title is, in the movie documentary is who's going to be the first to go 400 miles per hour.
Right. That's your goal, isn't it? 400.
Yeah. I say now these days, I want to go 400 miles per hour so I can retire and play pickleball professionally.
Well, now for a little while, you took a little bit of a break there, didn't you?
So crashing in 2018, I said to myself, what am I going to do? What are we going to do as a team? We had a team meeting. We talked about what we wanted to do. And we all agreed that, yes, we're going to get back. We're going to rebuild this motorcycle. We're going to go back out after the record. But in the meantime, the following year, I had an opportunity to race the Target 550 Streamliner car. And so that was probably the best thing for me to do to build up my confidence and, to be back out there. It was a little, I was a little hazy about it, but man, once I got that helmet on, I said to myself, I could be whoever I want to be. I could be a 400 mile per hour person. I could be a 300 mile per hour person. But, racing the Target, I was with the team for probably 4 years, and it was the best thing I could have done. I didn't want to sit on the sidelines.
Right.
I wanted to keep actively racing because the first thing you do in a crash is you got to get back on the horse and you got to get back in that cockpit and you got to get over those fears and you don't think about crashing.
It's who you are.
Yes, it is who I am. I am trained to go one speed.
Well, let's talk about this car, the Target 550. It looks like a knife. It's very different from the Bub 7 Streamliner. It's 43 feet long. It's got two Dodge Hemi V8s. So again, we're talking internal combustion. It's supercharged. I think they're twin superchargers, right?
Yeah, 2 supercharged.
Okay, alcohol fueled. It's got a conventional transmission. When I say conventional, it's got a 4-speed planetary gearbox in contrast to a sliding gear transmission. And you stop with a parachute, just like all cars of this speed, because the brakes simply won't work above a certain speed. So you have to have a chute.
Yes, I have a couple.
Yeah, right. So from an operator's perspective, how does it compare or contrast with the Bub 7 Streamliner?
You know, they're just two different animals. They're two different machines, and handling a 9,000 pound, 43 foot long car sitting in the back by the parachutes and having 2 engines in front of you, completely different from sitting in a Bub 7 motorcycle Streamliner up front. And all I have is a great view.
Yes. The Bub 7, you're at the nose. In the Target 550, you're at the tail. You've got like 40 feet of car in front of you.
I do. Yes.
It's incredible.
It's a big adjustment, I will say. But racing the Target 550 Streamliner was, I got to say, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I feel a lot more secure, and I feel so good in driving that car. It's just perfection.
But unfortunately, you never really got a chance to run it. So you were able to test the car, but because of COVID, you couldn't do any official speed runs.
Right. We couldn't do anything. Everything was shut down. I couldn't even fly. It was the day before that I was set to fly out to go to Australia is when we got notice that our airline tickets were all canceled. But I'll tell you that half the crew was already there. They were already there emptying out the container. They were there going through, getting all the missing pieces. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can't transport over in a container. So they were getting all the fuel and, going to the grocery shop and, supporting a team of 10 of us plus, we go into the outback, and that's a different life in itself. You have to pack everything that you possibly could use to bring out to the salt flats, because there's no going back to civilization. It would literally take you so many hours there, back, and we don't have time for all that. We can't go chase parts, like we can go up the street and go to AutoQuest.
Yeah, I mean, it's an effort just to camp out there because it's so remote, but then to attempt a land speed record, like you said, soup to nuts, you got to bring everything with you. And again, like we said earlier, you've prepared, you've got this mental focus, your team is just working day and night for this goal, and then the unexpected happens. And who could have guessed, right, with COVID? Valerie, I wonder if you had any thoughts about Jessie Combs. I unfortunately was never able to interview Jessie, but of course I followed what she was doing, and she had a terrible, terrible end to that speed record attempt. She was recognized by Guinness for being the fastest woman at 522 miles an hour. But unfortunately, we all know that ended in tragedy. I just wondered if you had any thoughts.
This part really hits home to me. I was the former driver of the North American Eagle.
Right.
And I don't talk about it too often, and, I don't really promote it or anything, but I left the team when I did, and I just didn't feel as safe as I could. I just didn't feel that was going to work out for me, and the safety was my number one concern. After so many people kept talking to me and telling me, get out of that thing, don't go in it. It is going to be, your coffin. And unfortunately, it took me a long time to realize, 8 months to realize that I need to figure out what I'm really going to do. Am I going to go down that path, or am I going to, just race my sit-on bike, motorcycle, my BMW? And, I decided that's the route I was going to go. I was going to continue with my BMW. And I had left the team. They're a great team. They're great people. All my experience was amazing. Jesse and we share the same passion for speed, which very few will ever experience in their lifetime, to go 300, 400, 500 miles per hour. So we're friends from afar, and we were friends that loved speed. And, I represent her still to this day on my motorcycle. I represent her by, a sticker. I have stickers on my bike, her ribbon with her red dots. We use her white, or her red, pink, white and polka dotted scarf. I wear that around my neck when I'm going down the racetrack. So I do keep her close to my heart. So, I didn't know her that well. I knew her, in the racing world, and I knew what she did beforehand. But I got to know her in 2018 when she inducted me she was the speaker for the Sturgis Hall of Fame. And, I had many conversations with her in amongst all of our travels and chatting with her. And when I saw her in Sturgis 2018, one thing she did to me really hit home, to where I really fell in love with this heart of a woman, is that she grabbed my arm and she held it tight, and she says, "Valerie," and she was talking about my crash that I had. And she just said, "How are you doing through all that?" And it really it made me feel like, oh my God, this is the first person that really just touched my heart to ask me, really, how am I doing with all the crash? Because, I did have a hard time going through all that mentally. And so, she did kind of help me, in that regards. And then when I was getting ready to go on the stage, after she announced who I was, and I went up there to go make my speech, I was just shaking, and she just comforted me. So she's very well missed throughout the whole entire community.
Yeah, absolutely. Very courageous young woman, and very accomplished,
Absolutely.
Gone too soon. Thank you, by the way, for sharing that. On a lighter note, you mentioned Sturgis. Some of my listeners, especially outside of the U.S., maybe aren't aware, but Sturgis, South Dakota is the site of a massive motorcycle rally that's been going on, I think, since the 30s. And bikes converge on Sturgis from all over the country. And the idea is road trip to Sturgis in August. What is that experience like?
Well, Sturgis keeps changing. Way back in the days when it was 2002, 2003, I was going there. And, fast forward it to 2018, it's changed. There's a lot of things that have changed for the good. And it was really rowdy. It was really it was a great place to go people watching. It was a great place to see, all these custom motorcycles and all these builders that were out there promoting their brand and promoting what they put their hard work and tears into. It was, it's very rewarding to, go out there and show off your new motorcycle. And, the rides out there, seeing buffaloes, right by, and you're riding right by them, Yeah. It's like, oh gosh. I mean, it's definitely a great experience. I haven't been back since 2018, but it's definitely
it's a party.
It's a party. Yeah.
Well, Valerie, earlier I mentioned that you're a pickleballer, and that's kind of your next goal, right? You're reinventing yourself once again. You're looking to be a pro pickleballer.
I am. And, pickleball gives me a second chance to be that competitive athlete again. And racing and pickleball go hand in hand. I started a Word document list, and I started listing everything that is so common with pickleball and racing. And, anywhere from the dedication, the mental aspect of racing and pickleball. Racing is 90% mental. Pickleball is 90% plus mental. The teamwork, the hard work, the practice, the training, the communication that you have with your partner, the communication you have with your crew chief, being that ambassador for a sponsorship, seeking sponsorship. And, and the other thing is like our paddles are made out of, there's a variety of paddles. There's so many paddles that are out there, and they're made out of Kevlar, carbon fiber, honeycomb, fiberglass. And look at all those things. That's what the Bub Streamliner is made out of. The tube is all the carbon fiber, the Kevlar, the honeycomb. So they do go hand in hand beyond what you would see just, pickling, But, I say pickleball is my superpower and racing is my throttle therapy. And it truly, I love playing pickleball. It's a special sport that will challenge and humble you. It tests your limits to see what you're made out of, and it really keeps you hungry. And, I've had a blessed 20 years of a racing career, and, I've been looking for that next edge of that adrenaline, and I can't race forever, but the pickleball really, truly puts me into another, competitive athlete again. So it's kind of fun. I can do both. And I did have a pickleball court at the Salt Flats. I was the first one to put a pickleball court at the Salt Flats and literally play pickleball. And we actually played pickleball with the mayor of Wendover. And,
That's so cool.
we can't slam the ball and do all the things and run around like on the court that we can, as we did on the surface of the Salt Flats. But, we can dink around and hit some long balls. And, but we were on the front cover of the newspaper.
I love it. I'm not at the level that you are, certainly with pickleball. I don't play all that often, but it is such a fun game. And it's really kind of fun to set up the strategy. I love a line drive right down the...
That line drive is amazing. It feels so good when you get low and you get that paddle.
Yeah. And I also love the soft game up close to the net.
Yeah.
That's really
You
fun.
want to upset a banger, you give them your soft game.
Yep. So much fun. Well, listen, Valerie, this has been such a pleasure. People can catch up with you at ValerieThompsonRacing.com, and that's kind of your portal to all of your social media. It'll all be in the show notes, so people can just click on it. But Valerie, thank you so much. What a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much, Maurice. Thank you.
That's all for this episode of Horsepower Heritage. I'll see you back here on Wednesday, July 3rd, with more of the people and stories behind the machines. In the meantime, check out the YouTube channel for some great videos and follow Horsepower Heritage on Instagram. And until next time, I'm Maurice Merrick. Thanks for listening.